dock that's there that has had lack of care, I would say, in the last 20 some years. Probably not an accurate windsock to abide by. Then to the left of that is just another photo from an old EAA chapter that used to exist at the Marquette Airport. So just a couple of my adventures. This is what I do in my free time. Unlike other 20-some-year-olds, I go to abandoned airports and abandoned airfields, and I'm hiking out there with my rain boots, and on soggy land, trying to figure out what airplanes might have landed here. Oh, we cut off my Northwestern Michigan airspace. That's okay. So this is an older sectional, but this is looking at the Leelanau Peninsula, and down there you see Traverse City. This would have been from 1994, so which is kind of interesting because if you look down at, see, I'm not a CFI, I can't teach you guys all how to read aeronautical charts very well, but on the bottom right of the sectional, you see the Traverse City Cherry Capital Airport, and they've got one north-south runway, an east-west runway, and then they have another little runway that you can kind of see that's kind of pointing to the northeast, kind of southwest. That runway no longer exists, but it's just kind of cool to see the context of which runways were previously here. This is no longer here, but it's a good insight to look at old maps, and I invite you guys to come up and look at the old sectional chart that I ripped off of my living room wall this morning. I have to put it back after this presentation. But the sectional that I've got down here is a Northern Michigan sectional chart from 1975, and it kind of shows some of the airports that are listed here that might not exist anymore. Of course, we've got the Traverse City Cherry Capital Airport. We've got the William B. Bolton Airport, which is called Yankee 87. That's going to be on the far left over here. It has been renamed the William B. Bolton Airport. Don't ask me why. That was as of recent, and I have not done the research on that one quite yet. But that would be Empire. In this sectional, it displays it as being a grass strip. If it's just a circle, it's a landing airfield, but it does not have a paved runway. And if it has, like, say, over by Sugarloaf, that signifies that it is a paved runway. So we've also got airports like Lake Anne, Green Lake, local to the area, Woolsey, way north of this sectional chart, the excerpt that I've got right here, which they are very famous for their pancake breakfast. I don't know if anybody's been to that up at Woolsey. No, nobody. All right, I guess you guys will have to do that this summer. um, We've got the Acme Skyport, which I'll go into depth a little bit more later. We've got Yuba, Torchport, Thompsonville, and Sugarloaf. And these are all airports that I picked out just that I want to mention are local to the Grand Traverse area. These are all airports I have landed at, airports that mean a lot to me because I have trained at every single one of those airports. I've camped out at a lot of those airports too. Uh, but all of these airports have a special story to how they play into the local aviation community. So here's a little bit better of a look at the airspace current day. I just pulled this off of my ForeFlight last week. So if you kind of look back at this one, you're looking at Sugarloaf. You've got Empire, which again is an unpaved airfield. You got the extra runway at Cherry Capital Airport. Now we're looking at this one. You might have to squint a little bit, but Empire has now been paved. We've got Sugarloaf is no longer pictured on this map. It is signified by a circle with an X through it. Now this means that the airport runway is still there. So theoretically, it's usable for a pilot like me. I'm flying overhead and I'm looking at my chart, and I have an emergency. I can look at this sectional chart, and the reason it's still represented is because I can use it in the case of an emergency. And it's just always nice to have those notated on a map. So we got quite a few changes between even 94 up until this current day, 2025 sectional chart. That encompasses more of the area. You got to see Torchport up there along the Torch Lake on the right-hand side. But are there any questions up until now about any airspace, any of the airports I've gone over? We'll get comfortable soon. It's okay. All right. Moving on to Ransom Field. Who's heard of the Ransom family? Okay, see, you guys are getting comfortable with the hand raising. I want you shooting up, you don't have to be completely confident in the answer, but I want to see hands. So I don't know anything about the Ransom family. Marty will probably be able to run circles around me in regards to that. But I do know that they had a field that was previously used as an airport. At the time, aviation was still quite novice. This would have been 1929, give or take. I take that year with a grain of salt because at the time, a lot of airports around the country were just fields, just farm fields, and a lot of times on maps they would just say landing field. Uh, why they did that was because a lot of these aircraft were much better equipped to, much better, for the time, equipped to just land on any field that you didn't see any big bumps or foxholes in. And you can land any direction that the wind was favoring. So they would have a windsock out there, and you just land somewhere in that field, and it was just a designated landing area. So landing strips didn't really come until a little bit later. There were some out there at the time, but a lot of local municipal airports really just had landing fields. So the Ransom Field was located over at the Grand Traverse Memorial Gardens, which is a beautiful memorial garden. I walked through it last week to go say hi to some old friends that are buried there, some old pilot friends, which are really, it's very nice to be able to visit there and know that they're buried at an airport, formerly an airport. But according to the TPC website, it's I don't have any confirmed data on this, so if anybody knows anything, feel free to pipe up. But the airport ended up moving over to the current location, and we've got right over yonder because it was closer to town, which does line up with the need for economic growth, as they stated. It's not really a prime location down where it was. It was a lot of farmland. We all know that the Grand Traverse Mall was built on a lot of farmland. This would have been connected to the same farmland, and it just wasn't going to be the best spot for an up and coming city that was Traverse City at the time. So they ended up moving themselves over to present day location. And I'll go into a little bit further detail about the different spots on the current day Traverse City Airport that had a lot of activity, because at one point it was the north side and the south side and it was the east side, and it's a whole story over there. And then here is a photo that I absolutely stole from the Traverse Area Historical Society archives online. We've got a random field, and I am pretty sure this is going to be Ransom Field. The reason I'm sure of this is because at the time, when in a lot of the very early photos that we have of the Cherry Capital Airport, there were a lot of tall trees. It was still pretty unruly when it came to the vegetation, whereas this would have been established farmland at the time. So would have just been their landing field again, not a quite a landing strip quite yet. And then we've got a little farm back there with some aircraft, which I don't identify any of those aircraft in there, but you start being able to identify airplanes a little bit better post 1940, but around the World War II era, because before then people were just putting fabric, wood, and airplanes together. Yes.
Compare it, but we have a picture of the buffalo farm that was where Grand Traverse Mall is now, taken from the other direction. And that barn in the right-hand corner looks really similar to what I remember.
Seen silhouettes of kind of photos, same thing, of the farmland, of the barns, and you can't tell because all the barns kind of either look the same or they look drastically different, or it's just, fuzzy in the background. So I would love to confirm this. This would line up for, the kind of photo that it is, just seeing the area. Like I said, there's and all the photos that we're going to look at from the 40s, 50s onward of the current day area of the Cherry Capital Airport, there's a lot of trees. There's a lot of vegetation. So this would make a little bit more sense for being Ransom Field than the present day location. So, but yeah, kind of cool. I was kind of hoping I would show this to somebody and someone would be like, absolutely not. That is some other place. But this was taken and it was tagged with an airport field. So that's where this photo came from. Obviously, there's airplanes in there, but I think we're just trying to nail down a better time frame on it, which I didn't preface this presentation, but we're going to get some timeline whiplash. So if you guys just brace yourself for that, because we're going to go back and forth a little bit. Yes.
Before Memorial Gardens and after it ceased to be an airport, we used to have the circus up there.
They had the circus up there?
When I was a kid, early 50s.
Really? Wow, I never knew that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I guess I forget that I'm supposed to be talking.
That's a good place.
A big open field, absolutely. Yeah, it's That area has been very interesting to me, knowing that it was once an airport and then not knowing really what came after it. Because I mean, once it wasn't an airport anymore, of course, my interest went. But it's interesting knowing that it used to be an airport, and too bad we can't still land there. But yeah, so the information on Ransom Field is rather brief. Just a landing field. It was just one of those areas that they took in airmail, took out airmail. Little side note: this photo came from the Traverse City, the Record Eagle, and it was discussing Mother's Day flights. So some barnstormer came in here and was doing Mother's Day flights. Apparently, that's what was captioned with this photo here. That came from the Record Eagle. But I don't know the gentleman in the photo here, but this would have been at Ransom Field as well. There's our field. So then in 1936, we decide to pick up and move over to present day location of the Cherry Capital Airport. Now this was a postcard. This wouldn't have been immediately in 1936. These aircraft pictured here are going to be more 50s era, but still a lovely, colorful photo. I'm glad that the Historical Society picked this one for my little blurb. But this hangar, take a good note of this hangar, because this hangar has interested me for so long, and I think I might have a demographic here that might be able to remember it. Yeah, just yeah, oh yeah, okay, good. All right, sweet. So this was completely new information to me about 2 years ago, knowing that this hangar used to exist, this cool, awesome, very aviation typical hangar, and then they took it down. So that's sad news to me. But I think it's really cool that people still recognize it and where it was and where it was formerly located. Did you guys ever visit in, stop in there at all? Yes, Jeff.
Later on, that became the hangar for Winchester Aviation. And I got my private and my commercial license with Tom Winchester, who was the examiner that worked out of that hangar there.
I didn't know that Winchester was there because I always thought they were at the other side of the airport. Very interesting. Jeff is saying that he it became after some time there. What would that have been? Like the 70s then? It would have been Winchester Aviation.
And stuff. And so it was there before that. And I've been in the hangar. I mean, it had huge beams and I mean, it was a classic. Let me tell you, it's too bad it's
Oh.
not historic.
Yes, Bill.
You're at the airports, where you get security, that hangar with Winchester on it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what I do know about, and I'll kind of go into again, timeline whiplash, right? Winchester Aviation was a local fixed base operator. They kind of did everything. They did flight training. They fueled airplanes. They also had some mechanics that were based there. I've known that they have existed at the Cherry Capital Airport, but I do think that after some time they ended up moving across the field to present day Av Flight hangar, and I do have some better documentation of that. It's not actually included in this presentation. There's so much information about airports, I couldn't possibly squeeze it into the 70 slides that are in this presentation. So hope you guys are comfortable. But so we make our way over to Cherry Capital Airport, present day location. And like some of you said, you remember it's off of Garfield. So this would have been over by the Sarah dealership now, just off Garfield. Most of you guys kind of know where that is. Now this hangar faced south, and this was the municipal airport at the time. I'm not actually entirely sure. This would have been something that would be great to ask you guys if anybody does know when it became the Cherry Capital Airport, because it was called the Traverse City Airport for the longest time until it became the Cherry Capital Airport. So that is still information that I'm still looking for. But here we've got Pennsylvania Central Airlines, Boeing 247. Interesting tidbit about these aircraft is that they only had about 14 of them with Pennsylvania Central. I'm able to tell this is Pennsylvania Central Airlines Boeing 247 on account of the fact that it's got one little small symbol that it resembles the Pennsylvania Central Airlines logo. Also, they were one of the only airlines to utilize this aircraft. At the time, they weren't the best aircraft. They actually all got grounded for a time being before they started flying again. But this would have been used for some passenger transport, probably more likely airmail routes, cargo. They did have passenger services that went to other satellite airports like DTW. Grand Rapids was an up and coming airport at the time as well. They would go up to the Sioux in northern Michigan, but primarily there wasn't really a very good established service until a little bit later into the 40s. Here's another shot of same kind of aircraft. in front of the old Quonset hut style hangar. Kind of just a really great vintage photograph. I'm not entirely sure who was creating these photographs at the time, but they did one heck of a job, because this is just a really, really neat perspective of what used to be off of Garfield, which is now a car dealership. So that just makes me a little bit sad, but it's kind of a neat little callback to the heritage over on that side. So keeping up with some of the airline services that we had at Traverse City Airport, Pennsylvania Central was operating the 247s up until they all got dissolved by 1948. They ended up merging with Capital Airlines, who was formally established in 1936. They were doing other routes in the Midwest kind of area and over kind of a little bit to the Northeast. But when they merged, they ended up taking on a lot of DC-3s, and DC-3s started taking on some of the routes, as well as I forget what other kind of aircraft they have. I'm not proficient with airline history as much well here, but Capital Airlines was pretty prominent from the 40s, 50s, up into the 60s. Now, Capital Airlines also ended up being dissolved. It merged into United Airlines in 1961, but a lot of the prominent photos that we have from the Historical Society, thank you very much to the archives, are of the Capital Airlines fleet. So this one's kind of neat. It's just an old airplane that's named Traverse City. So. And this was titled in the archives as possibly the opening of the route, of a new route, or the introduction of Capital Airlines into the Traverse City, or one of their services here, just by the balloons. And there was a big celebration, it seems, there. Then this would have been back over by that old hangar as well. How we doing? You guys sticking with me? Are you a little enthused? A little bit, maybe a little bit. Yes.
The old hangar,
It wouldn't be at the old hangar.
1948. They'd be at the Navy terminal.
At the Navy terminal. Okay, see, that information would, this is useful for me. You and I, sir, are gonna have to talk a little bit after this. He's saying that this wouldn't have, he's saying that this wouldn't have been at the old hangar. This would have been over at the Navy facilities. Yeah, I guess they would probably have a little bit more spacing over there. Hmm. Yeah, Capital Airlines, kind of a cool airline that we had in here that is no longer existent. It's just another photo of one of the Capital Airlines, one of those inaugural flights. Fred, I didn't know you were a celebrity here with Capital Airlines. All right, so which one's Garfield and which one's Parsons? I mean, I know. You guys know? There are two photos. I love these photos because I don't know the story behind them. Who was taking photos? Who was surveying straight down this way in such small little excerpts? But yeah, that the top right or what here would have been Garfield, now Sarah dealership, and then what would be or is Boone Street there. Got a couple of the airplanes out front there. Don't know what kind of airplanes those are, but that was primarily where they would have been coming in and out of. And then on the left here, we do have Parsons Row. We've got Oakwood Cemetery area down the bottom left. And then north of that, we've got runway 18. And I like this photo because I formerly worked at 45 North Aviation, and just at the little intersection, just off the runway to the left, you've got a little intersection, and then right about there would have been where our hangar is right now currently. So it's just kind of neat to see where I worked and what it would have looked like so many years ago. All right, now we're getting into some juicy parts of it. So Naval Air Station Traverse City was established around wartime, and they started commandeering the northwestern side of the airport. And this is a nice overview that came from the Naval History and Heritage Command. Copped it from their website. And you're looking straight down, and so the top would be to the north, the bottom would be south. So you're looking at this. Oh, you see it right there on the side. Now on the left, you can see that small terminal, the little Quonset hut style terminal. That would have been the big hangar that would have been down there. Still, a lot of general aviation traffic would have been coming in and out of there, and they utilized it a lot during the naval process. Now, the airport, there's like a whole other story we could talk about with like the Navy ships that ended up in Lake Michigan. That is not my forte. I only know what's going on at the airports. Fred might know. um, now, they started using this mostly as an experimental airfield, as far as I'm aware. And this was much more of a testing area. It wasn't any serious base aside from this is where people came to train. It's where they came to test aircraft, and more specifically, where they would be testing some drone aircraft, which we'll get to that in a minute. But this photo is going to be looking to the south. And again, you see those crossing, intersecting runways. And I think those are very unique. Part of the interest in these runways for me is that I've walked around this airport so much, and you're walking around and you're kind of kicking some dust, and you look down, and you're like, this piece of cement doesn't look like the rest. What is this? And this would have been me 5 years ago, little 20-year-old me not knowing what's going on at the airport. Come to find, it used to be a whole runway. And runways hold a significant place in my heart, especially ones that are no longer in use, because I can only ever think, who was the last person to land on that runway? What were they doing? What kind of aircraft were they flying? Uh, when did the runway fall out of use? What happened? Now, typically, here in Traverse City, our main runway is the east-west runway, primarily runway 28. That's where the winds are going to favor. Every pilot can attest to it. It's also just the easiest runway to land on. You got an ILS on it. You got plenty of taxiways to get off. Some of the other runways don't boast those same characteristics. But I think the intersecting runways are some of the most unique aspects of this airport. Here's another kind of cool photo. We got a PNY, and then we have what would have been the Coast Guard eventually kind of starting to pop up after this. When it was used as a naval air station, the Coast Guard popped up in 1945, but it was utilized as a naval air station up until then. And at the time, I think I've got another photo of it, hopefully here. I think I do. They had created some housing barracks over behind the old terminal, little Quonset huts kind of housing where everybody was living at the time when they were working on developing this other northwestern side of the airport. So this photo would have been looking to the northeast. There would have been, if you see down, I can't really point. There's a large, slightly taller building in the forefront on the bottom right, and that is going to be the control tower. And behind that is going to be one of the primary hangars they were utilizing at the time. And that would have been tore down, oh boy, 70s. Somebody want to back me up on that one? 70s is what I was thinking, because that's when they would have put the new hangar that currently exists in. 71. Okay. I just know that the new hangar popped up in the 70s, the one that we still currently have and utilize today. So, yeah, that photo was really cool to find, though. Just a very unique perspective. You definitely wouldn't think it's Traverse City by just looking at it. But you can still see the north-south runway, and this is probably taken right over the east-west runway. So during all this fun stuff happening over with the building of the Naval Air Station, again, I'm going to keep going back to that little municipal hangar. They started utilizing that for some of the experimental aircraft. They still had fuel and whatnot over there. This is a photo that I found from the Naval History archives of a torpedo airplane. And apparently this was one of the first airplanes that they started putting torpedoes on. So this is a neat little biplane. You just typically don't see that with biplanes. But I'd kill to see something like this land here today. Okay, here's a really good photo of the old terminal, the old hangar, and then to the right, you're looking at the north-south runway. Actually, this photo has been pretty hard to get to, but we're pretty sure this is going to be that main hangar that's on the bottom left side. Behind that is going to be the barracks that were created, the Quonset hut style barracks, and then on the other side is where the Coast Guard is going to be from all the runways. So all the way over to the right is where we're going to find where the current Coast Guard is going to be, where the Naval Air Station was established. This is unconfirmed information, but I like to think of it as true because wouldn't it just be so cool? I have been told by some of the old farts that I go and have coffee with every weekend for our EAA chapter that Airport Access Road uh, became Airport Access Road because of its proximity to East Bay. So I was hearing that they were landing some of these airboats on East Bay, and then they were taxiing him on that road down to the Naval Air Station, now the Coast Guard Air Station on that road, which would make perfect sense. It goes all the way down there. Still haven't been able to find any information to back that one up, so it's kind of going to take it with a grain of salt on that one, but it would just be really, really cool to find out if that would have been accurate. Um, here's going to be looking on to the east. You've got that east-west runway. You're looking off the left side of a wing of an aircraft. You've got your old hangar and barracks right behind that. I took a lot of photos of these apparently. He again stole this from the Naval History Heritage Command archives. All right. How many people have seen this photo anywhere within the Traverse Area Historical Society? Ever seen it on the Facebooks? Nothing. They posted it a while ago, and it was titled "Being a Drone," which to me, being a pilot, I know that drones don't have people on them, so I'm like, well, that couldn't possibly be a drone. Turns out it is a drone. It's a very old drone, and this aircraft was supposed to be a kamikaze style American experimental aircraft. It was supposed to basically be radio operated, and the front where you see the pilot, he that was supposed to be a detachable part of the cowling in the front part of the aircraft, where they would put radio navigation equipment into, and they would radio navigate it around. And so they did a couple of flights for those out in West Bay is primarily where they practiced. The USS Sable was based over in the West Grand Traverse Bay, and they landed these aircraft out there on it. And sometimes they would let pilots come and practice out there on it. Like I said, the Naval Air Station was more of a practice facility. So they had these very small aircraft carriers parked in West Grand Traverse Bay, and they were small for training because they figured that if the pilots could land on the smaller aircraft carrier, once they get out in the big ocean, it would be a lot easier on the much larger aircraft carriers. But there's a couple of other photos of this really neat airplane. But we only have this one photo in our archives online from the library, and I just want to know a little bit more about it. So again, all-knowing, reliable resource, single TDN1. It's called the TDN1, and the experimental name for it was going to be the XBQ4. It just comes in different versions. Very high-tech naming, I guess. Top left would have been same kind of aircraft, same aircraft if not. Only a couple of them were ever really made. A couple of them raced up here. Only one of them was piloted. That being this one. And this is a photo going to be looking out to the west. So you're taking a picture looking out west, and you got Long Lake, Silver Lake in the background. They would be heading back towards Traverse City. Kind of just a yeah, found a colorized version of it too. So I thought that was kind of neat. So just what a neat airplane though. Just how cool is it that was flying over where we are sitting right now at one point in time. And another one. This one, oh man, I wish I stuck it in here. This would have been over where Meyer currently is, over on 31. So you guys are all Traverse Cityans. What's the road behind Meyer? Frankie. This would have been Frankie Road. That's what they labeled it as. And then up here would have been Silver Lake Road. Yes, that's the identifying factor of it. They had it written down on there. But yeah, I'm amazed how many air-to-air photos they were able to obtain of this. Is just how cool, and considering this was all just training. Now, these aircraft were never actually used in any combat, unfortunately. They had an order of them, and the war ended up kind of fizzling out, and the need for them wasn't as severe as it previously was, and they kind of started inventing new ways of aerial combat, and so these got phased out pretty quickly. Here's a picture of this is the USS Sable, and then this is the landing of a drone on said aircraft carrier. And then behind this, on the right-hand side of the photo, this would have been the downtown area. that looks familiar to historians. I couldn't cram enough pictures of this thing in here, apparently. But this would have been at the Cherry Capital Airport there, somewhere on the field. All right, so we're moving into Coast Guard times. So post-war, Traverse City was still a very vital role when it came to the large established airport, and the Coast Guard became commissioned in 1945, and it was kind of put much more in use in 1946 from the people I've talked to at the Coast Guard Air Station. But this would have been still the old hangar that we're looking at here. Like you said, it would have been come down probably in the 70s, and then they would have built their new one, which I know was built in the 70s. And we're looking westbound, and still up in that top left corner, we're looking at that old Quonset hut style hangar. And then here's going to be mid 70s when we're moving over to much more local Coast Guard present day location, some of their aircraft that they've got there. And here's the demise of that little favored hangar that I love so much. I was told this was 1988. And I was told this on behalf of the fact that they remembered construction crews kind of coming down Garfield Road and kind of picking stuff up on big trucks and taking it out. Further than that, I can't really establish a better year. Does anybody have any input on that one? Fred? No? And now it's just crazy. Right. Yeah, but that's really unfortunate to see that hangar ended up coming down. I'm not sure why. I would love to know why. I'd love to talk to somebody about why. But I think a fun part about this photo specifically is if you look in the fine print of one of the last things that would have been stuck on this hangar, it says Paul Bunyan's home field. So we're moving a little bit forward in time at the Cherry Capital Airport. This would be 1981. Somebody took a really awesome photo of some air traffic controller. I wish they all looked that cool today. They don't. I've been up in the tower. They're all just drinking coffee and they're all stressed out. This guy looks anything but stressed right now. And now we're moving a little bit closer. This photo would have been later 90s, early 2000s. Awful quality on the photo because I copped this from the depths of the internet. I had to find a web archive and pull it out of there, and this is the best quality I could possibly get. So this would have been the old General Aviation Terminal. Little fun fact about this old General Aviation Terminal. Obviously, there's General Aviation aircraft in front of them. You can make it out. We got a Twin Comanche. This one's a Mooney on the bottom left. There's a Cheyenne or something in the back right. Our EAA chapter held this spot as our home base for a couple of years. So that has a very special place in my heart. It used to be a flight service station. Yes. I'm getting there, Jeff. Jeff is saying that this used to be a flight service station, so pilots would be able to go here for weather briefings. You had a staff that worked in here, and their whole job was to assist pilots, people like me. Flight service stations still exist. You can call them. They're very friendly. They love it. If you ever go flying, highly recommend you call them, just because there's some people waiting to pick up the phone and tell you that you shouldn't fly because the weather looks crappy. Besides the point, I digress. In the back, we've got the old air traffic control tower. This got torn down along with the old terminal around 2004. There's some pictures, again, awful quality of the old terminal, and I'm sure a lot of you might remember this if you've been local to the area for some time, so hopefully it gives you a little bit of nostalgia. It's very unfortunate for me, for somebody who never experienced it. I've had interest in old architecture, but finding these photos was like a holy grail because apparently nobody has photos of the old terminal. You look them up, you can't find anything really on it, so it was pretty cool to find these. And more importantly, the sun catcher. Little side story about this. Personally, I always ask people about the old terminal, and everything that was told to me was pretty vague. Oh yeah, they had an upstairs. Oh, they had a bar, they had a restaurant. Well, that's cool. That's cool to me. I want to know why there was a restaurant at the terminal. What was it called? I don't remember. Okay, all right, that's fine. And I'm sitting there, one Saturday night at home, as a 24-year-old does, and I'm scrolling through, and I find this photo of the Suncatcher Bar and Grill, and I find some further information about where it was located. And to me, this is just the coolest thing. So it might be a little bit more recent history to some of you guys, but for somebody who never got to experience it, it was really cool just to find out that little tidbit, after asking so many people about it and not being able to find out what it was. So this would have been a little map of the old terminal that no longer exists. Now it's just hangar space. So I'm going to really briefly touch on the National Cherry Festival Airshow. I am on the National Cherry Festival Airshow small committee. I'm working on a lot of other history with this. I kind of plan on touching a little bit more on it, but I got a lot of content to get through, and I feel like I'm chugging along. So the air show started in 1978. And everybody here obviously knows the Thunderbirds, right? And then we also know the Blue Angels. Yay, Blue Angels. Uh, now, just out of curiosity, who likes the Blue Angels like more than the Thunderbirds? Who likes the Thunderbirds more than the Blue Angels? You guys don't really? You guys don't go to the air show? Oh goodness, I'm talking to the wrong crowd. Um, so Traverse City is very proud, and a lot of citizens are very proud of having the Blue Angels come every year. Obviously, they're not coming this year. They're not coming next year. It's the something something centennial next year. They all have performances on the East Coast for that date next year. But very prideful of the Blue Angels. But not a lot of people know that the first performers to come to Traverse City were actually the Thunderbirds in their T-38s. These are the Talons. This is not over Traverse City, obviously, but this is what their performance would have looked like. A little bit different from their F-16s that they do fly today. So just kind of an interesting tidbit, though. Uh, Performers in Traverse City, air show performers. I love air shows. I love everything about aerobatics. So kind of delving into this has been a little bit interesting because there's a real lack of information present about this. So this has been going through the Cherry Festival archives, talking to people who started working the air show in the 70s. But last year I did find in my studies that the Cherry Festival in 1933 had a skywriter who was typing stuff over the cities or the skies of downtown Traverse City, which is a really cool kind of little fun fact that there was some artist out there flying an airplane, doing aerobatics and whatever in the sky with some smoke oil on. And last year, if anybody went to the air show, you might remember we had a gentleman named Nate Hammond, or maybe you don't. You remember his airplane. He had smoke coming out, and he was drawing cherries in the air and smiley faces. If anybody saw that, he could have very well been the first skywriter to come back to Traverse City since 1933. There's no other record of anybody else coming through. The Where I found this information about the skywriter in 1933 was through the Record Eagle, looking up air show information. So just kind of cool how much time can really pass before something might return here. So just to put it all in perspective, the Cherry Festival air show ended up moving over to the Bay in the mid 90s. It was previously hosted at Winchester Aviation at the old airport, at in front of the hangars that are in just to the south of the Coast Guard currently. Um, it didn't really give enough space to host large amounts of people, so they moved it over to the Bay so more people could come and visit it. And it's a free event, so super cool. But highly recommend you guys come and hike out and take a look at what we've got this year because we've got a really good lineup. Yeah, that's all I got on the National Cherry Festival Air Show for now. More to come on that. It's been a big work in progress with the Cherry Festival on getting all of their records and trying to kind of compile a better history since 1978 of all the performers that have come and what milestones we might have reached with that. Whew, okay. So, part two. There's more, guys, but wait, there's more. Um, so my EAA chapter, 234, is the 234th chapter of upwards of 1,500 chapters now that exist for EAA. little brief history. They started in Wisconsin by Paul Poberezny in 1953. And him and his wife Audrey began a small home build association. And originally it was all experimental aircraft, home built aircraft. Again, experimental is a scary word, but it's not as scary. It just means you can kind of do a little bit more with your aircraft and still get it certified by the FAA. And other aviation communities around the United States started to catch drift that there was a home built movement coming through after the war. There's a lot of civilian airplanes and civilian pilots that have now entered the aviation industry. So the 50s were very monumental in creating the general aviation movement. So chapter number 1 exists over in California because some Californians said, that's really cool, I want to be part of it. And then some other chapters started popping up. And their chapter 1 in California because the home base was in Wisconsin. So that was the first extension, the first arm extension of this big association. And now this is a completely national organization. And we're so lucky to have this chapter here in Traverse City. But 234 is a pretty small number. So we were established in 1965. And these are the inaugural papers that I was able to dig up courtesy of our chapter president, Bill, in the back, who went to Oshkosh and actually picked up a whole file of papers that I have had the privilege of rooting through and reading about every little detail from how we got started to when the hangars were built to when they built the Porta-John just outside the hangar that they built. So a lot of stuff was going on in the 60s. But 65, I apologize because I think in the Historical Society newsletter, it was a typo, said 55, but it was 65 that we had established our chapter. Need a minimum of 10 members to start the chapter. So these list of 10 people were interested enough in creating an aviation community, specifically in experimental aviation, that they went ahead and they formed chapter 234. So that's where we got our humble beginnings. We just had our anniversary birthday earlier this month. We had a big birthday party and it was fantastic just to kind of commemorate how far we've come. And it's just really touching to know that there are pilots before my generation. These are the pilots that would have made the community and what it is today and what I get to be a part of. So on the left, we've got our little certificate that says, hey, yay, we're a chapter located here in the Grand Traverse region. To the right is Harry E. Hibbard. He is buried over at Oakwood Cemetery, and he was originally in the Army Air Corps and came back here to Traverse City. He was a musician. He was a teacher over at the Interlochen Arts Institute, and he also was a very avid pilot. So he was instrumental in, quite literally instrumental, in creating this chapter, and he was president for a good couple of years. And he ended up passing away in 1988, so he didn't get too much time with the chapter. He kind of had rescinded from it into the 80s. Just, you know, a lot of people kind of pop out flying. We try to keep everybody into flying, but, you know, there comes a time where sometimes you just kind of take a little step back. But the roots of our chapter begin over in Acme. So enough with the Traverse City Airport. We don't care about that little blob down there with all the runways. We're looking slightly to the northwest of TBC Airport at Acme. And so if you remember from the beginning of the presentation, this would be an unpaved airport signified by just the circle that exists. And this one says this would have been from 1968. This is about the time that we were really getting established with an airport. This chart will say it's at an elevation of 710 feet and got a 1,300-foot runway. It doesn't have any other further information in regards to that, but it's also considered as private. This airport was established by a family that was living just off of Lautner Road. Some people started to fly in, and it kind of took root there, and we had some more general aviation enthusiasts that started to flock there as Traverse City was growing to become a much more commercialized operation. Here's another little overview map. This is from a topography map, so it's not going to give you, you know, too much direct information, but you can kind of see the area that we're looking at. So just off of Lautner Road to the left, we're going to find the Acme over on 72. So if you can kind of picture where that might be. And this is an excerpt from a 1981 Airport Michigan directory. These books come out annually, and they give you all of the information about all airports in Michigan. And this was found by me at Wilson's Antiques, so it was quite a find. But this gives you all the information pertinent about the airport and finding out what you need to know really before flying in there. And this would have been in 1980 when, so you're almost just over 10 years past the airport's inception. And EAA Chapter 234 has already been moved in. They live here now. This is where the big root of aviation and general aviation is at the time. I took this photo from, it came from Mike Denja, who contributed a lot of information and photos about this airport online. But he phrases it as this would have been perhaps the zenith of its era, which is really, really neat. Having walked out there even last week, there is nothing there. We're going to be looking kind of to the east, east, southeast. Um, these hangars down here would have been the primary hangars where everybody would have come for flight schools, gotten fuel. There's a trailer back there that was said to be used for the same kind of thing. We have a lot of airplanes that are here. You won't even find this many airplanes on the ramp here at Traverse City Capital Airport today. So this is when general aviation was just really going absolutely insane, apparently. And I can only wish that I was alive when everything was a little bit more community based like this. Unfortunately, we don't have a good home airport for general aviation like this as much anymore. So this is a really unique perspective. Uh, this gentleman is Dave Corso. I figured you guys would like the photos of him. All these photos that I'm going to show you going onward from here came from a gentleman named Mark Kaufman. Mark Kaufman, I got in touch with after doing some research on the chapter and finding that the second president of our EAA chapter was Paul Kaufman. So you're looking at these names online. You're in your 20s, so you're going through Facebook and all this social media, and the only Kaufman I could find was going to be Mark. And I got in touch with him and I asked him about his experience at Acme, and he said, I have a flash drive for you. So I waited several months until he came to visit up here, and I got to go have coffee with him. And he gave me all of these amazing photos of the people and the pilots that came before me in this community. And so a lot of these are just really awesome contributions that we've had to our chapter. And I just kind of want to go over some of the people and some of their really unique stories of the pilots that have paved the way for people like myself to be involved with aviation, local to the Grand Traverse area, of course. This was Dave Corso. He was one of the first pilots over at Acme. He was very into aircraft restoration. I was just talking with my dear friends in the back here about how he was a steerman enthusiast, and he became very good at restoring steermans. Now, this photo is interesting. This one did not come from Mark Kaufman. I found this in all of my records of my chapter, and I didn't know who it was. I didn't know who was in the picture. I didn't know what was going on at the time. It was just a photo with no further explanation except for what's down here by Betty Bach. We'll go into her a little bit later. She had, or I don't know who must have really taken the photo. Oh, no, it must have been Betty. But who had put information on with the photo down here, because for the longest time I thought it was tape. So I hadn't until Mark came over and I showed him the picture and he had bent it down. I was like, oh, it has like a brief description. So for the longest time I didn't know what the whole deal was with this aircraft, but who it belonged to or anything of the sort. So Mark, I show him this picture and he gets very excited because he shows me this picture, which is the same aircraft. So we just kind of tied two and two together. And this is the aircraft after it had been restored. I'm not sure when the restoration was complete, but Dave Corso ended up flying this around the area and selling it, and it still flies today. So that's just really, really neat that this aircraft used to exist at a hangar and, still there, flying people around. I think it's down in Arizona now. This photo is in the EAA hangar. We had a home at one point. We have a home now, but we're kind of a part of another association, just kind of living there for right now until we can find our own home. But this is the EAA hangar located at Acme Skyport. They built this with the funding from the organization money that they made doing pancake breakfast, steak fly-ins, all that other fun kind of fundraising stuff. And they had poured the cement in 1971 in the hangar. It used to just be a dirt floor hangar for a while until they poured it in 1971. This was found under a file cabinet by the gentleman who recently bought Acme Skyport, and he was fixing it up and moving things around, and he moved it over, and there are my people apparently pouring cement in their hangar from 1971. So that was a really, really interesting find. To the left is the hangar. It has now been redone and restored itself. It was kind of in disarray. To the right is another kind of photo way from way back. I'm standing actually on the runway looking at the hangar. What it is now. It's they put new paneling on it. They pretty much just kept the framing and they took all the paneling off and redid it. Another interesting character as part of EAA Chapter 234 would have been that of Betty Bach. Has anybody here read the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull? Got a couple of people. Have you ever heard of it? Some people? Yeah, okay. Very famous book by a gentleman named Richard Bach. It became pretty famous in the late 60s, early 70s or so. Well, Richard Bach had a wife, and together they had 5 children together. And uh, he ended up kind of making out pretty well with the profits of his book, and he decided that family life just wasn't for him, unfortunately. So he decided to step out, and she decided to step into aviation as resolve for, something kind of traumatic happening in her life. So Betty, with 5 children, was a private pilot, which is just so crazy to think about, a general aviation female pilot in this era, late 60s, early 70s. They were divorced in 71. She was a pilot a little bit prior to that, but she took this aviation as a way to console herself through this grief of the change that she was going through in her life. So she picked up everything she had, and she moved to a farmhouse in Glen Arbor in the early 70s. And at the time, she had owned a Champ, and this was the Champ. The top left is right when she had first bought it, and the top right is its old paint scheme. She bought this Champ. She brought it up here. She had it over at Empire Airport, and then it eventually made its way over to Acme Skyport. But bottom left is her and the kids, and then bottom middle would have been her working on the Champ. They eventually did a restoration on it. But just a really interesting story that I had never known about until I talked to Mark Kaufman about this amazing woman who had persevered through so much and just was very involved in general aviation. She was one of the only women who was a pilot involved in EAA Chapter 234 for a while, who wasn't the wife of another pilot. So she had this Champ, and she ended up doing away with it and selling it to Mark Kaufman and another gentleman named Randy Baxter. Mark and Randy were like 17, 18 years old at the time, so very responsible pilots who couldn't really pay off the Champ. So some dads had to kind of bail them out, just so I hear the story goes. But they still did the restoration on it. This is the same Champ after it had been repainted. Um, Champs are really good airplanes. I've flown one. I'm gonna go fly one like next week because they're really, really fun airplanes to fly. Very classic, very honest airplanes. But this one lived over at Acme for quite some time. Um, just these 2 kids that learned to fly in it. They soloed it out there. Top right picture, you're seeing that big hangar that would have been like kind of the FBO type deal, the fixed base operator at Acme. Um, let's see. After a while, the Champ kind of goes on its own way. Betty departs with the Champ, and she ends up buying what is called a Tiger Moth. And she gave a lot of flights to people in this Tiger Moth at fly-ins, which is just, again, really a big stride for women in aviation, especially just on a local community level. She wasn't, a very big, I'm a proponent of women in aviation. She just was a pilot who happened to be a woman. That's what I always say about myself. People call me a female pilot, and I say, I'm just a pilot who happens to be a female. But she buys this beautiful Tiger Moth, just a really interesting biplane. She gives a lot of rides out in it, and she it's her pride and joy for quite some time. But these are some really interesting photos that Mark was able to take of her, and just how neat to be able to document this in her adventure in life at Acme. Going back to this Champ that was going through a big restoration process over at Acme. This is them hauling it over onto a trailer, and some of the restoration process, fixing it up. Kind of interesting. Up at the top here, they were doing some engine runs, obviously without wings, so they had quite some way to go. This would have been Betty and Randy at the time, just working hard on this airplane at Acme Skyport. So Betty became the secretary and the treasurer of our EAA chapter for quite some time. She ended up leaving in the early 80s and moving out to the north east. But this correspondence is always funny to me because I have no idea what it's about. I pull these papers out, and they were talking with EAA National, Paul Poberezny, very big staple in our aviation community, and encouraging the love of aviation. Something had happened, and EA 234 wanted to, put their hat in the ring and say something on behalf of it. And you can read the fine print or you cannot, but the most important part that I really like about this correspondence is that Paul says, I have learned more about people than I have about airplanes. And I think that is so important to kind of take in about the aviation community. And it says a lot about what we do and what kind of people we are, is that they say you come for the airplanes and you stay for the people. So these personal stories that I tell you, and these names that I share with you are important to the legacy that we've created for the community going forward, especially with our EAA chapter, which is it's been around for such a long time. But Acme ends up being a very active general aviation airport. Here are some of the photos of some of the aircraft flying in to this airport. Very wide array of aircraft, airplanes you would not see if you drove past Cherry Capital Airport today, unless there was a really cool flying going on, which I don't know of any anytime soon. But yeah, it was definitely a sight to behold. And you see this kind of variety when you go to Oshkosh. There's a big flying over in Wisconsin that everybody at EAA usually goes to, and this is pretty typical of what you'll see just walking down one of the streets down there, is how many different airplanes you get, just all different kinds of walks of aviation. So Mark Kaufman also enlightened me with the story of his father, Paul Kaufman, who was our second EAA chapter president. And Paul had taken what is called a BD-4, a home-built experimental aircraft. He had bought it someplace down in Illinois and trucked it up north. And the photo on the bottom left is when it got home. And he did a whole restoration process. So this would have started in the late 70s and pretty much gone all the way up until about 2003. This was Mark with his airplane. This is when it was housed over at Cherry Capital Airport after the dissolution of Acme Skyport, which happened around 1997, 1998. This was a continuous work in progress. It was in a lot of newsletters for our chapter. It was a staple because until I would say the mid 80s, EAA was purely home built, purely experimental, and it kind of started encompassing a little bit more. But everybody was very interested in this airplane. So much so that there was a lot of people that would fly into AirVenture from all walks and meet up and talk about this airplane. They would fly all these airplanes into one location so they could all sit down and talk about them. And this would have been Mark and his father somewhere in there with a bunch of other BD-4 enthusiasts that all came to Oshkosh in 1984. So these are some of the final photos of the BD-4. It actually ended up crashing not once but twice. Once at Acme Skyport and once over in East Grand Traverse Bay. Experimental aircraft, you work on them independently, so you kind of have your fallback sometimes on them, depending on what kind of work you're putting into them. But unfortunately, he was very honest about his build and what had happened, but he lost engine power flying over East Bay and ended up wanting to put it over by the beach. And he tells this story on a BD-4 forum that I was able to find online and just kind of talk about very transparently what happened. And if you know anything about any good pilots in your community, they're going to tell you everything very honestly about what they do right, what they do wrong. That's what makes a good pilot. But unfortunately, after that, the aircraft was pretty totaled, and I think it ended up being scrapped. Paul Kaufman ended up passing away, I believe, a couple years after this incident, like 2008 or so, and his son ended up not keeping any parts of the airplane, unfortunately. He says that he wishes he did, but we don't have it anymore. So kind of a little sad story, but a lot of stuff going on. Yes.
Time he died, he had bought what was left of the aircraft back to the insurance company,
Really?
trying to rebuild it. Unfortunately, it didn't live long.
Yeah. It was a quite an adventure with that airplane. His son talks so candidly about it. It's a very interesting story though, but um it's a neat looking airplane. But yeah, the first accident was over at Acme. I think he same kind of thing, lost engine power and it just kind of went right off the runway, which lucky for around Acme Skyport's a lot of farm fields, so it's not too much of a hazard. So uh, in my chapter papers, I gathered this photo from some of the records, and this is just kind of discussion of a chapter fly-in. Chapter fly-ins are a very big staple in what makes a chapter obtain a decent amount of donations to be able to fund scholarships, projects, further events. And this is just kind of some discussion about a fly-in that was to be happening in September of 82. And here is that said flying. This photo is be from the first slide that we've got there. Again, just really showing the immense array of and variety of aircraft that we had at one point within our community. When fly-ins happen, a lot of people will fly in near and far. So these airplanes would have been based all around Michigan, probably with a personal invite saying, "Hey, come out here. We've got $2 steaks on the grill." And that, will get anybody anywhere. That'd be great today, but it would be a little expensive. But the photo on the right, just how many people came to this? How many local people took just vague interest in aviation, pilots or not, aviation enthusiasts? Aviation is something that really brings people together, and it's so unique having everybody bonded by just the interest in flight. Even if you're maybe a little scared of flying, it's a little interesting to learn about. So it's really nice to know that even back then they were bringing this many people in to kind of take a look at what was going on at the airport at the time. A couple more photos. Pitts being here, that's so cool. Pitts aircraft are really unique aerobatic airplanes. I have yet to fly one. It is on my bucket list to fly one, but apparently everybody back in the day owned one. So I don't know what happened to them all. Some other photos that Mark was able to give to me. This was a really funny file. Was anybody living here in 1978? Okay. Does anybody remember this? Okay, great.
Down there on the hangar.
Right. Okay, Jeff's saying that his plane is on the very end there, which, yeah, that would check out. Well, that's just general aviation in northern Michigan for you, and that's also why we like to have closed door hangars in here, and more importantly, not northern facing hangars. It's just, yeah, that's not a good day for any pilot. This was my screensaver for a really long time. This was taken at Acme Skyport. Somebody's kind of showing off. Typically, you don't want to show off. It might be a little dangerous, but that's a pretty cool photo. So thank you, Mark, for that one. So Acme Skyport kind of started to degrade into the 90s. There was an issue with the land around 97, 98, and most people picked up and they moved over back to Cherry Capital Airport. We've got a variety of T hangars that are available here that are built sometime 60s, 70s, 80s. And we kind of lost our grassroots aviation location in northwestern Michigan. So really unfortunate to know that we used to have a very vibrant grass strip that was utilized by all the local pilots, and it's just not there anymore. So this was a couple of years ago. These photos were taken by a gentleman who had hiked out to Acme Skyport. This would have been way before I even knew of its existence. I learned about Acme Skyport about 2 years ago. And I've been living here since 2018, so it was quite some time. Being a local pilot, it was kind of incredible to learn that there used to be a whole different atmosphere just 5 miles outside of town. A little far for me. I live on the other side of town, but still cool nonetheless. Um, so the photos on the right were taken by a gentleman who ventured back out there to kind of see what was going on. There's an Experimental Aircraft Association sign. I would kill to know where that sign is today. Have no idea. They cleaned out a lot of those hangars, and I think a lot of stuff went to the dump. On the far left here, the large picture, this is a photo that Mark Kaufman took of his father's old spot in these old little hangars. And it's got his tail number in there, and that was still there. I think it was 2017 he went back there. So stuff remains. These hangars have now been redone by the new gentleman who owns the airfield, who has reopened it. So it looks a lot nicer now. They use it for a skydive operation. So we've moved back over to Cherry Capital Airport, and we got to find a way to keep up with the general aviation camaraderie. So Bob Whitcop was a local man who was very enthused with flying, and he started creating what they called Bob's Breakfast Brunch. And this consisted of flyouts basically almost every week. I don't know how these guys did it so much. That was probably because gas was like $1 at the time. But they flew all over the state for brunch, and I think it's super cute that guys are having brunch because that's a girls' thing nowadays. But like breakfast fly-ins are great. Nowadays we call it the $100 hamburger because you're spending over $100 to get to some place for food. And I do them as much as I possibly can. But they would come out with these lists, these huge lists of fly-ins, and this probably was I can't read it too far in the fine print there, but you have a couple stretches of weeks, months, and they would just say, "Hey, we're flying here, we're flying here," and they would all fly out together. However many airplanes, 5, 6, 7, 8 airplanes. Maybe it's raining, maybe nobody goes, but just a really unique way to bring local pilots together. And then some people who are not pilots, they would ask people, hey, if you're not a pilot and you appear, we'll take you, bring some cash, you got to pay your dues. So just a really nice little unique thing to chapter 234. They came out with this up until uh, the late 2010s. I think kind of Bob stopped it. He ended up passing away, unfortunately, in 2021. I was very fortunate to know him for a couple of years, not as personally, but I did see him at meetings. But that would have been him with his aircraft. I would like to think that's like, ooh, Antrim, perhaps. I'm not really sure what airport that would have been. That's not anywhere near here, or at Traverse City at least. Bottom left is him with his family, and they have shirts that say Bob's Breakfast Brunch. So that is just really, really neat how much it extended outward, even from EAA, and just how much of a staple it was within our aviation community. So now we're getting into a very, very recent history. Yes, it's still history. It's still 20 years ago. This is a young Eagles fly-in. Awful quality photos because they came from the depths of the interwebs. But this was a fly-in that happened over at the NMC ramp, the Northwestern Michigan College ramp. And what we do for Young Eagles is we provide free flights to children to get them involved and interested in aviation. A very amazing, unique event by a lot of volunteers. So people will volunteer their airplanes and their time to come out to these events and try to introduce children to flying. And we've made a lot of pilots out of this. I volunteered for a lot of events. It's been really, really gratifying. Our chapter has also since, a lot more recently than 2005, started a Ray Scholarship Fund, which is a national scholarship available to specific EAA chapters if they qualify, and it gives children $11,000 to pursue their private pilot's license, which sets them forth on a career potentially in aviation, and it fuels the next generation. I'm on the scholarship committee, and it has been very, very gratifying being a part of that. But kind of just some really interesting photos that we just haven't had as part of our arsenal as of late. So we're working on adding these to our local chapter to kind of say, hey, we've been doing these for a long time, bring your kids out. We want to bring them into aviation. So now we've worked our way to present day, and our chapter is still here. It's still thriving. We still do flyouts. This is a photo from our fly in, fly out at Empire last year. I camped out. So way to the right of this picture is like me waking up and stumbling out of my tent. Like I just slept on the cold, hard ground with no mattress, and I'm like, yeah, airplanes. But we host pancake breakfast fly-ins, so even when your back hurts after sleeping on the cold, hard ground, you get free pancakes, so that's always great if you fly in. And we also can join us with the Young Eagles event, so we are flying kids in and out all morning while also serving pancakes, and this is really how we fuel the next generation into the love of flying and keep our community intact. So the foundation that the pilots before me set forth in 1965 have still created a great community for all of us to be a part of today, so this is what we're doing. Here's a couple more photos of our involvement with our Young Eagles. We have a trailer, which has been a huge development as of late. We never had a trailer before. I don't think in 1965 they had a trailer. But we bring all of our pancake breakfast stuff around in it. We want to put a sim in it so that the kids can play a flight simulator in it and kind of get the feel for it. But right now, it's just been a really awesome chapter to be a part of. And I'm very, very grateful for the opportunities that the chapter has given me, and being able to kind of look back into the kind of communities that we've been able to tap into through our long, long history since 1965. Being a part of history and EAA, which has been around much longer than us, and being a part of the broader expanse of aviation history, our chapter is going to be really lucky to host the Ford Trimotor this year. So if you're feeling like you want to have a historic flight, We're going to be looking at this come August. We're still kind of working out our details and whatnot, and tickets haven't quite gone on sale yet, but it's going to be a very unique flying experience. And the last time we did this, historically speaking, was in 2005. So we've actually hosted this before, but nobody within our chapter currently, none of our active members remember hosting it. So we're all trying to figure it out because we don't know what they did 20 years ago. We're like, how did you do this? How did you host this? So it's going to be a very, very unique kind of flying event. But we're going to have our Ford Charmotor here from EAA. They own one. They keep it in tip-top condition. I've had the privilege of flying in it. This is a 1929 airplane. Just the most basic kind of flying you could get. Just once in a lifetime experience. It's absolutely incredible. But just kind of a little callback to what we're doing. So as cool as I think this airplane is for having flown so many years ago, I think it's cool that we previously hosted it in 2005 as part of our chapter history. But that's pretty much all I've got for all of you. So hopefully I talked your ear off, and thank you so much for letting me talk at you for however long I've been up here. But I want to give a special thanks to my chapter for letting me go through all of our records and also take them away from where they're supposed to be hidden in a file cabinet because I totally kidnapped them so I can get all this information. And a lot of the gentlemen that helped me find my way with this information and give me all the contacts and the resources that I really needed to get to make sure that I was getting accurate information. It's still a work in progress, but I'm very, very privileged to have been the steward for this program. So that is all.